Hello and welcome to this chapter. In this section, we will learn about public services and microservices. First, we will introduce the definition and usage of public services. Then we will talk about the definition and usage of microservices. First, let's learn about open services. What is our open services? Public service refers to adding shared data operations to the service and then publishing the service as an API. By calling the API, the data interaction between the current application and any application can be realized. The way of service to API greatly expands the scope of data sharing between application and improves the security of data by limiting the data operation. In our high code, we provide a variety of smooth docking methods with the existing system of the enterprise, and the mutual call of API is one of the very high-frequency modes. But before we use the public service, here are some contents that we should pay attention to. First, set a service as the parameter of the service after the public service, and then do not encrypt it. If the application where the public service is located is not compiled for publishing, but only compiled for reading, then the subdomain in the interface reading ear needs to be edited by VRSI rail is replaced by Esprit. If the application where the public service is located has set a custom domain name in the configuration, the domain name of the public service will be replaced by the set custom domain name. The public service is fixed and the POS method will make a request for settlement data. Please reasonably organize and divide the public service. Finally, when the logic of the service class changes, you need to preview or publish the current application again. The shared service will take effect, otherwise an error will be reported. Then let's look at how to use one of our public services in the application. Yes, we still open such a case of our address book. Before, we had such two services as data addition and data display. These two services may also make a call to others externally, which is equivalent to providing such an API for him to make a call. So how do we set up a public service? The setting method is actually very simple. All our public services are made on existing services, so first you have to complete a definition of your service and your things. When you complete the definition of the whole service and things, and complete a series of debugging, you open it and change it button. When you open such a button, it will tell you a service path, a return type that you can set, a preview path and a formal path. When you open the public service, remember to preview it first, because if you don't have a preview, your path will not take effect. So here we know that for such a public service, one of its addresses is the one of the preview addresses, and the parameters it needs to receive are a phone and a name, and then it will return a yes/no, the reason for success or failure and the result of a submission. It is equivalent to having an API here. Now that we have an API, how can we call this API? Here I will open our Postman Toast, which is a tool for making API bar. Here we will debug such an API according to a series of rules we have just learned. First, it is a reading path. We copy the reading path, and then copy it here for pasting. Then we already know that all requests are POS requests, so here we change its request method to a post, and then in one of its subjects, it contains a name and phone, so here we also add such a series of parameters to its main body. The first one is its name. Let's copy it and paste it here. Similarly, the following is his phone. We also copy and paste it, and then there are some values here. We can write down the values here casually. For example, here is the debugging app, and then we can write down a phone here casually. In this way, we can finish it. We first write an address, then define some parameters, and then debug. Then we click on a send, and we can see that it tells us that the submission has been successful, and its return result has been returned. We can go to the database to see if the value of our debugging API has been entered. When we switch to our database, we can see that on the side, where our data ID is equal to 9, all the branches of our debugging API have been written in. Therefore, what is the biggest role of public services for us? It is to provide an external interface that can directly perform common database operations on us, which is equivalent to a series of database operations defined by us. We can provide it directly to the outside, and they can use it. Then, there is also a data display here, which is equivalent to providing a page number and the current number of pages, and then you can directly use it. In the same way, we open it as a public service, and then we have a preview. We can directly use it here, and then we copy one of its paths here. Similarly, after we are in the POS, we will create a new one for pasting, and then change the way here to a post. Then we will write a series of data in the 8 classes here, and its first parameter is called our number of American entries. Then, the second parameter is called our current page number, and then we write it casually here. For example, we count 5 items per page, and then the current page number is equal to 1. As soon as we see that we click send, we can see that a series of data will come in here. Of course, there are only 4 pieces of data in our database, so it is equivalent to that in this way. Others can directly call some information in our database for access. Then everyone here should pay attention to when we want to use the online version, we must use our official path for an access, and if our official path is to take effect, we must click a build, and we must use application release normally. When we don't use such a public service, we can turn it off, and then preview it again, and we will turn off such a public service. Then we also come to Postman. We can also see it in the audit. For such a service, he can't get any data. Then, after completing the test just now, we can turn off a public service here. Then we will talk about our microservices. First of all, microservices and one of our shared services support a service to conduct a debugging in different application. For example, we define a database output service in high-code application and in application B. We can also use such a database output service through the method of shared services a service, without the need to add the corresponding database. We can understand that the shared service is a public service used internally in different application, which has several advantages compared with the public service. First of all, the calling method of shared service is exactly the same as that of common service. After the application is published, the request is encrypted. However, because the public service needs to be provided to the external for a call, the request is not encrypted, so our shared service has a better security. Secondly, if the service calls the service, the shared service will be called through the internet, while the public service will go through the internet, and the calling efficiency of the shared service will be obviously higher. In addition, the shared service has its own document function. When the definition of the service is modified, the users of the shared service can view the service meal in real time and debug it with one key, which greatly improves the efficiency of communication between the front and back platforms. In addition, it can help us to reuse cross-application services and provide effective tools for the structural optimization of complex application. We can separate the front, middle and back end of an application system strictly by sharing services and combining the main application method, as shown in the figure below. For example, on such a way, we can develop an application system. There are 3 front-end application, for middle office service application, and 3 back-end application, among which 3 front-end application are responsible for 3 different front-end interface entries, such as a small program end and a user end PC end, then a management end, and then 4 middle office cases. According to different business scenarios, different service functions are defined to provide one call to the front-end end, while the back-end application is responsible for the operation of basic services. All services are interwoven by sharing services. After using this method, our front-end and middle office, and back-end the interface can be very clear, which is convenient to split the development work and ensure a clear division of labor among members. In addition, the document function of sharing service with API improves the communication efficiency of the development team, and each grouped app can carry out a separate build and release, effectively reducing the risk of update. For example, if we just update a UI style of a front-end end, we only need to rebuild and release a case of the front-end end, and the part of the back-end does not need to be modified. In addition, because we split the whole application, reducing the complexity of each application, we effectively reduce the cost of our release, reduce the memory occupied by the editor, and improve the speed of application loading and preview. Next, let's introduce the scope of shared services. There are 2 types of sharing scope for sharing services. One is to share in the main application, and the other is to share in the account. For the service under the application in the main application, it can only be set as the main shared service. For the service under the independent application, it can only be set as the account or the service shared within the enterprise. The setting of the sharing range is similar to our database. The reason why the account service resources cannot be used in our main application is that an application group is an independent and complete application system save or transfer to enterprise users independently, so the application in the group cannot rely on a resource outside the group. Next, let's introduce how to use one of our microservices. It's also very, very simple. Based on a service we have already done, we can see that we have selected such a service to add. We can click here to see that it is called a microservice enterprise. Let's open this button, and then change the service name here to Debugging Teaching Edition. The reason why we want to write such a complex name is because, there are already many microservices in our current enterprise. I want to write this name a little more complex to facilitate me to search later, and then here service notes can describe what a service like you is used for. For example, here is an operation such as address book entry, name and phone. In this way, we have completed the creation of a microservice. It can be found that as long as we have completed the definition of a service, it is very simple for us to create a microservice. Just open the button. Then we preview it again to make sure such a microservice is ready for use. Moreover, when we complete an addition, you can see that it comes with some receiving parameters and a return parameter, so at this time, we can directly click a debugging, and you can see that it tells us that such a piece of data has been submitted, and its data ID is 10. We can also switch to this side to have a look. You can see that there is another piece of white data here. Why should we do a separate microservice here? This is because after the microservice is defined, we can make a call directly through the front end. For example, what I do here is very simple. 2 input boxes and 1 button, we can directly call a microservice here. What do we do when this button is clicked? We can directly call such a microservice. One of its name is not our default value, that is, one of the contents of our input box, and one of its phone is one of the contents of our next input box. When it is completed, we can let the application system make a debugging record, that is, one of the values of its return results. Let's preview an application like ours here. Open the check. For example, it's called a little black, and then the phone here writes casually, and then go like this. When we click a debugging, we can see that he tells us that it has been submitted. Let's see his submission results. His name and his phone have all completed a submission, so that we can visit us for a service here. Is a new black item submitted? So you can notice that since I set up a microservice here, others can directly use such a service to operate on the database of your other application. So this is the very convenient point of our microservice. Then you should pay attention to as we currently create an independent application. What is an independent application? When I create a new application, some of the application I choose directly are our independent application. If I create a new grouped app here, I will open a microservice here, which is not called a microservice of an enterprise or an account, but a microservice within a group. The microservice within a group can only share a data within the group. Therefore, through today's study, we can understand that when we complete the design of a service, that is, the design of our so-called database operation, we can set it as an open service for external systems to make a call between databases, or as a microservice to make a call with an internal system. This is a very convenient series of feature. That's all the content of this section. Thank you for watching.